we will go ahead and get started. All right, so welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this month's Did You Know webinar. Over the next 25 to 30 minutes, I'm going to be walking you through an introduction to Question Builder, which is our really powerful tool that allows you to create and add your own custom questions into your curriculum and your tests. So if you do happen to have any questions throughout my session, please feel free to put those into the Q&A box located at the bottom center of your Zoom screen, and I'll make sure to reserve some time at the end to address your questions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So when you click into your gradebook, the Question Builder feature is located in the Assignments tab. So over under Assignments here, Question Builder is the fourth option from the top. And when this loads up, you're going to see that first thing you have to do is create a folder in order to start building questions. So we're going to click Create under Folder Options. And we do suggest giving your folder a descriptive name since you're going to use the folders to help you find and add the questions that you create to your assignments. So I'm just going to call this Chapter 1, and this will be my folder for all questions related to Chapter 1. So we'll click OK here. And then from here, we can go ahead and start creating questions within this folder. But before we do that, I do want to kind of show you in these folders we already have created a few different types of questions that you can build with Question Builder. So I kind of want to give you a little preview of that, and then we will jump in and create a question from scratch. So first one I wanted to show you is actually our video-based question. You can create questions that have videos embedded, which is pretty handy. You can also create multi-iteration questions. If you're familiar with Hawks, you know that our default questions always have multiple versions, so that when students have the question on their assignment, they're all getting different versions of the question with different variables. So with Question Builder, you do have the ability to also create questions with multiple versions. And I will show you how to do that in just a few minutes. And then I also wanted to show you the option that we have to create graphing questions. So this is a really robust tool. There's a lot you can do with it. We'll kind of go over the basics today, but I encourage you, if you have further questions, to reach out to your training and support representative if you'd like a more detailed training on Question Builder or help with building a specific type of question that you have in mind. So with that being said, we're going to use my new Chapter 1 folder to build some example questions. So I'm going to first click Create here. And then it's going to pull up the step-by-step process of building a question. Now, you can create several different types of questions with Question Builder, and those options you can see in this teal answer bar here. This dropdown has the different question options. So multiple choice and free response are probably our two most common question types, but you can also create open-ended. This is the only type that's not automatically graded if you add it to your assignment. So keep that in mind. You will have to manually grade those questions. You can also do click to select and click to insert questions. Both of these are, I would say, more frequently used in the humanities. So for passage-based questions where you want to click to select a phrase or insert a punctuation mark, something like that. So you'll choose what type of question you want to create here. And then the other big decision to make is if you want your question to be single iteration and static, so there's just one version, or you can use our variable manager to create that multi-iteration question that I mentioned earlier, where the components of the question change out to create multiple versions. So there's more variety for your students. And I will show you how to build one of those in just a minute. But I always like to say the very first step with Question Builder is actually designing your question. So before you jump in and start building it in the software, we do encourage you to design it first, especially if you are creating a dynamic question with multiple versions. So you'll want to plan it out so that you can determine which parts of the question are going to change and then maybe use Excel or Google Sheets to map out those dynamic parts of the question and make sure that all of your iterations line up and the answers evaluate correctly. So to give you some context for this, I started this process in Excel, and I want to show you that really quick. And then I'm going to use that a little later on to show you how to build a dynamic question. So let me show you my question planning document. It looks like this. So you'll see up at the top, I have my question statement. So this is what I'm actually asking students. And then I have the variables outlined in red and replaced with A and B. And then my answer is C. So what's here down below, the iteration table, this is basically my variable table. So this is column A, this is column B, and then this is the correct answer, column C. Now you can stop here. I also added a column D, which is this, because I wanted to add a custom explain error. So I anticipate that my students are going to make a specific mistake that would result in them getting this answer right here, answer in column D. And if they do, I want to provide them with that specific explain error message to help guide them back to the correct path. So that's an option too. I wrote out that explain error, which I'll use to insert into my question when we build that. And I also wrote out a hint that I'll insert as well. So just a little preview. We'll come back to actually building this in just a minute. So let's talk for a second about the components of the question. So we'll start at the top and just kind of work down. The first is the question header. Now this part is optional. This is where you can include directions, tables, images, anything that you want to show for every step of the question. Optional, but it's the place where you can include things like that you want students to have access to if you have multi-step questions. The question statement, of course, is where you lay out the actual question that you want students to answer. And then down below, you can put in as many answer choices as you want, but you have to have at least one that is designated with 100% credit. If you have any unused answer choices, you can go ahead and delete those by hitting this little trash can button here. Okay, and you can also designate the amount of credit that you want to give. So you could do half credit. It can be anything between 1% credit and 100%. You can also choose checkboxes, which would allow students to select multiple correct answers, or radio buttons, which is only going to allow them to select that one answer. Now, jumping back up to the question statement, we do have basic formatting options for building out that statement, just like you would have in Word or Google Docs. So up here, you'll see you have your bold, italicize, underline, all those basic formatting options. But then we also have where you can insert a table or a picture, a special symbol with this here. And then we also have where you can create that variable table to build dynamic questions, which I'll show you in a second, as well as our expression builder, which is this symbol right here. So that's the next thing I want to quickly go over is our expression builder. So if you're building a math-based question where you want to include mathematical expressions, we do recommend as a best practice that you build the whole thing in Expression Builder, because that will make sure that it's read correctly by screen readers for accessibility reasons, and it just makes sure that the formatting doesn't look wonky or anything like that. So I kind of want to show you an example of how you would build an expression. So for this sample question, my question statement is going to be: simplify the following expression, writing your answer with only positive exponents. Okay, so then from there, I'm going to provide the expression that I want them to simplify. So we're going to click on the expression builder symbol. And then Expression Builder uses LaTeX for formatting, which is standardized. So if you're familiar with LaTeX, you can use those shortcuts. If you're not familiar, we have this link out to LaTeX documentation that can help you build your expression. But to make it even easier, we've built several shortcuts for the most common functions and put those into buttons up here at the top. So it's very likely that you might not even have to refer to this, but we like to have it there just as an extra resource. But I'm going to show you how I use these shortcuts to build my expression. So typically I recommend starting with the largest component of the expression, which for my example is a fraction bar. So within this first set of curly brackets is my numerator. And then if I tab over inside the second set, my denominator, so negative 5y. And then I want to add an exponent, which is this shortcut right here, negative 11. And as you're building it, you'll see the preview pop up down below so you can make sure that everything looks correct. And then when you're done, just hit OK, and it'll insert that where you had your cursor. So then the next part would be to create the expression for my correct answer. So we'll repeat that process with Expression Builder, add the fraction here, and the correct answer is going to be negative y to the 11th power. So it's looking correct so far. And then tab over to the second bracket, 5. And then OK. And then I would just designate that as 100% credit. So it's super easy to use. And from here, we can either keep this question static. So that would mean it just has the one iteration, the one version, or you can build dynamic questions with multiple versions. So I was showing you that Excel document earlier where I planned out my dynamic question. So now I want to actually pull that information over and show you how to build a dynamic question in Question Builder. So I'm actually going to delete this out and we're going to start over here. So let's pull that document back over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just copy and paste the question statement. We'll put that here and you'll see that the variables are in red, and we'll replace those with the actual variables in a minute. So the next step is to add in this iteration table. So what's really handy is you can actually copy and paste your whole iteration table and put it into our variable manager, which is this symbol up here in the toolbar. So just select the 1A column and then you can, oops, I think I didn't properly copy it. That's my bad. Let's try it again. So let's do copy and let's try it again. And paste. Okay, so from this point, we do recommend that you delete any unused rows or columns. So I have this row number 5 is blank. If I leave that, it's going to insert blanks as part of the different possible iterations, which we don't want. So let's remove that row from the end. And then we're going to give our table a name. I'm just going to call it variables for simplicity, and then just hit save. So when you save, it's not going to give you a clear indicator, but it is saved, and you can hit cancel. So now the next step is to replace our column A in our question statement with the actual variable A. So to do that, you're going to highlight what you want to replace, go into your variable manager, make sure that the correct column is selected, A, and insert. And you'll see that it changed it to this kind of button looking picture that says variable A. So then we'll just repeat that for B, go back to variable manager, select column B and insert. And now we can't forget to add our answer choice as well. So down here for answer number 1, the correct answer is variable C. So we'll insert that. And then last but not least, I had that custom explain error message here. So I want to add for answer number 2, variable D, which is my incorrect answer. So we're going to leave it as 0% credit. It's incorrect. But then I'm going to add that explain error message that I planned out. So if I pull that back over, we can copy this whole explain error message. And if we hit show explain error, it'll pop up with a box where you can include that. And then the last step here, of course, you're going to replace these variables again to make sure that the feedback that students are seeing is actually customized with the version of the question that they received whenever they were taking the test or doing their homework. So let's replace those variables really quickly. Insert. Okay, so now we've added that custom explain error. So we're pretty much done at this point building the question. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And you do have to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it question 1 again for simplicity. And then you do have to specify low, medium, or high difficulty. And then when you hit OK, your question is saved. Now, a couple other just additional options that you have if you choose to use them. We have the ability to add in those tutor options like we provide in our default questions. So over here under add tutor options, you can add a hint, a solution, a general explain error message, or a step-by-step instructions for how to solve the problem. So I did plan out a hint, so I'm going to add that one in. So I'm just going to copy and paste that from my planning document, add my hint. So this will display for students if they ask for it, just to kind of help put them on the right track. We could also, if I wanted, I could add a solution. We do recommend that you input something here, even if it's just the answer itself, because, you know, as students are practicing, it's important for them to be able to see the correct solution. You can also add a general explain error message that would show anytime a student answered a question incorrectly. You could just provide some general guidance based on the mistakes that you anticipate students might make, maybe some advice to help push them back in the right direction. And you can also add step-by-step instructions for solving this problem. So it's very customizable, but you don't have to add any of these. So once you've added whatever tutor options you want, you'll just make sure that you save the question. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to show you is how to add these questions to an assignment. So if we go back to question bank, I'll just show you within this chapter 1 folder that we created, you'll see that question we just made, question number 1. You'll see a preview of it here. And then you could also click permissions, and this is where you can designate other instructors that you want to have access to reading the question, making changes to it, or deleting it. Or grant means that that instructor can give other users permission. So you can adjust the permissions there. So in order to add these questions to your assessments, we will exit out of our question builder and just go back to our dashboard here. So let me go back here. So I'll first show you how to add it to your homework lessons, which would be under curriculum. And then just click into the curriculum where you want to add it, and then choose the lesson where you want it to go. So if I want to add it into 1.1, when Lesson Builder opens up, I'm going to navigate to the left-hand side question bank and use the chapter dropdown to filter to instructor created questions. So when I click on that, the second dropdown turns into my question folders. So within that chapter 1 folder is that question 1 that we just built together. And then you can select that question and add it to your assessment or to your homework lesson, and then click save. So that's how you would add it to homework. You can also add it to a web test. So if we go back to assignments and then web tests, we're going to just create a new assessment really quickly so I can show you how to add it. So create new, it's really similar to adding it to a homework lesson. The drop down is up in the top left corner where it says question bank. And then you would choose instructor. So this filters to your instructor created questions. And then these are our folders. So within our chapter 1 folder, if we click on it, it shows the questions in that folder. This is the one we created. So we'll just select and add that question. And then you could continue, repeat that process, adding your questions, and then save. So there you have it. Let's see, it looks like we're just about at our time. So I hope that you found these resources helpful and timely as we approach the end of the term. I have reserved a little bit of time here to address any questions that you have. So feel free to chat those into the Q&A box at this time. And let me stop sharing so I can see if we have any questions. I'll give you guys just a minute. I really hope this was helpful. If you have a question, go ahead and type it, if you can, into the Q&A box. Let's see. Okay, I see a question. When you create an answer, will the system differentiate? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm reading it as -1/2. Would you be able to explain a little bit more? Will you send out another chance to review it? The presentation, you mean? Yes. Yes, we can definitely make the recording available. Yes, I'll make the recording available and make sure. Let me actually get, I think I should have a list of y'all's names, but I'm going to take a picture so that I can remember to send this to y'all. But yes, I will definitely get the recording to you. If the negative sign is included before the fraction. So if you're building it in Expression Builder, you would just want to make sure that it's in the right place. So if it's meant to go just in front of the numerator, you would want to make sure that it's within that curly bracket up within the numerator. And if it's in front of the whole thing, you would put it out front outside of the brackets. Does that answer your question? Because that's the only way that it would be able to tell, is if it was built differently in Expression Builder. If you want to count both correct, that would be fine. You would just have to designate that in your answer. So you could add 2 different answers that you both make 100% correct. So you could just like add it in both versions and designate full credit to both of those answers. Yeah. Any other questions? I know there's a lot. This is a very robust tool. There's a lot you can do with it, and it can seem confusing at first. So if there's any other questions you think of as you're playing around with the tool, don't hesitate to reach out to your training and support rep. We'd be happy to give you some more in-depth information or help you build the question that you're looking to build. But it looks like if there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I will make sure that you all have the recording available. And thank you again so much for joining me. So if any additional questions come up as you're looking at this tool, please reach out to us for more information. We'd be happy to help. And I hope you all have a great day. Good luck with wrapping up your semester. And I hope you have a lovely holiday. All right. Bye, everybody.